All right, everybody. We have a very interesting cave dude who goes left and right. Sprite doesn't change, floats over gaps, and can't jump. Well, this is a platformer, so I think it's a good time to create a jumping mechanic. So today's tutorial is we're going to add gravity and add jumping. But I have to make this disclaimer that in the world of Game Maker Studio, the rules of physics only slightly apply. Okay, so we're going to take advantage of the physics of Game Maker Studio, which is not always going to be in line with what we know about the actual physical world. So, without further ado, let's work on our character. Okay, so here's our object player. We're going to add an event. To jump, we're going to use the key pressed, not key down, and we're going to use space. So when we hit the space key, then it's going to jump. If you want to use a different key, that's fine. Just make it a key press, so you can't just like hold it down. But the other thing is that we only want to jump if we happen to be on a block. In this case, we can't just jump from the middle of the air. So we're only going to jump if there's an object underneath us. So what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if an object is in place. And that's if object at place. So we drag this out. And under object, we are going to select the object block. Okay. So we're going to check to see if there's an object below us. So we're going to check relative because it's relative to the player. So we're going to check at the same horizontal location, but we're going to look underneath. Now, for those of you, I should also make the disclaimer, for those of you that have been studying math and looking at the Cartesian grid, plotting x, y points, you learned in math that when you added to the y, you moved up. Well, in the case of Game Maker, y of 0 is the top of the screen, and as you add to the y, you actually end up moving down, which is the opposite of some other game engines and the opposite of what you might have had in your algebra geometry class. And so in this case, we're going to say if an object of block is 2 pixels below the player. I also want to remind you that the player's origin was actually 1 pixel underneath the player in the center of the player sprite. So everything else stays the same. So we're going to say if there's an object in place, what we're going to do is we're going to set the vertical speed. We're going to set speed. That's here. And what you want to do is you want to drag it so it's highlighted to the right of it. And when you let go, there should be a little line that goes from the center bottom of the if object at place to set speed. We're going to set it to a vertical speed, and we're going to set its speed to, guess what? The jump speed, which we already created in the last tutorial on the create event. So if we hit space, if there's a block underneath us, we're going to set its vertical speed to jump speed. Now let's go ahead and test this out, see how our cave dude works. The first thing I want to do is I want to test it by moving to a spot where there isn't a block underneath. So I move over here. Don't worry, gravity has not been applied. I'm going to hit space. You hear that click? And nothing happens. I go over to the block and I hit space, and now my cave dude can fly. All right. We're going to add a little something just to make it interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to say if he goes out of the room, we're going to restart the room. So we're going to add another action to our object player. So I go over to the player. We're going to add an event. This is under other, and it's outside room. So when an object goes outside of a room, what do we want it to do? Well, if we're outside the room, we're going to restart it. So let's go ahead and hide this. And let's double click over here. And I'm going to type room. And actually, it's right here. It's restart room. So just drag it out. Restart room. And you can always search for it. That's how I usually get mine. And let's go ahead and test it out again. We're going to try flying. And then we're going to add some gravity. And I just want to show you how this works. Oh, this takes a while. Yeah. We have godlike powers here, don't we? We can just add, we can just choose gravity. We can restart the world, the room in this case. All right, so let's add gravity. Okay, so when are we going to add gravity? We're going to add it, actually, hold on just a second. I better double check. I remember, we're going to do it on the step event. Now, this is where I told you the physics do not normally apply. So what's going to happen is when we add gravity on step, all it's really going to do is take the amount that we set it for, and it's going to apply it to the character. But we don't want gravity to be working when it's in the middle of or when it's on a block. And that's why we're saying, so we're going to basically turn off gravity when it's on a block, and we're going to have it on the rest of the time. We're going to do all of this in steps. We're going to choose step, 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 in step. Now we're going to say if there's not, oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. We're going to set the gravity force. It's called set gravity force. And we're going to set it to the variable, which is gravity amount. I couldn't remember what I called it. Gravity amount. Okay. So now we're going to set the gravity force, but we're going to check to see if there's a block underneath us. Then we're going to set that gravity force to 0. So we're not going to be applying gravity when we're on a block. So we're going to use that same if object in place, drag it down. Go ahead and check the block. And we're going to make it relative, in relative, and choose 2. All right, so if there's an object block underneath us, that's what we're saying, because we have a y of a positive number. And remember, the origin's at the bottom. So if there's an object in place, then we're going to set the gravity force to 0. So I drag it so it's highlighted on the right, and we set the force to 0. Okay? This might be a good time to pause the video and go ahead and put in your blocks and then come back when you're done. Let's go ahead and test this out and see how gravity is working. Go ahead and go to start it, and we're going to hit space, test out our jump. Goes up. Uh-oh. What happened? It keeps going down. Okay, I thought we set gravity to 0 if there's an object below us. Well, we need a collision with the block. Okay. So if we collide with the block, we're also going to set gravity force to 0. So let's add that right now. We're going to add collision with the object block. I'm going to set the vertical speed to 0. And let's test it out now. See how it works. There we go. Now, one thing you should be aware of that may cause problems is you want to double check your block. Go back to the object block. And notice solid is checked. So this is a really important step here. Notice what it says right here. It says solid instances will automatically be placed back in their previous position when in collision. This is for both the object that collides with it and itself. So if I uncheck this and I go ahead and jump, let's see what happens after jumping when the other object's not solid. See, it keeps going through. It's not resetting it. Okay, so we're going to go back here, check it as solid. There's one other thing that we want to do, and that is let's create another object that is a floor. Now I'll explain the difference between a block and a floor. Why would we have a block? Why might we want a floor? Let's take a look at the sprites. So here is sprite floor. You'll notice it's just along the top. The nice thing about this is we can use it as a platform, but also have a lot of space underneath it. So that this will allow objects to move within. Now let me just kind of go back to this running, just so you can see. I just want you to see how high you can jump. In fact, let's do, actually probably should have waited on here. But I want you to see what we're able to, how high up we can jump. Let's add a couple blocks to the room and see what happens when we do that. So we need to go back to the room. And I gotta hide this. And object, we're gonna go to the room, sorry. Room 1, I'm gonna drag another object out. I'm gonna put it right here. And then I'm gonna hold down Alt. When I hold down Alt, I can put multiple objects. We're gonna see if we can jump 2 blocks up. And we'll add a couple more blocks here. Let's just go ahead and test it. I'm really curious. Yeah, you can't actually jump up 2 blocks. Oh, I got stuck here. Did you see that? That was weird. All right. Jumping is not working. Why is it not working? Well, probably because my sprite, the origin is underneath it. So there are some little issues that we may have to deal with as we move forward. One of the things that we're going to do is create floors instead of blocks. Like I said, it's going to allow you, for example, if I put a block above my character, I have to put it, if he's gonna walk under a block, I have to put it like, if I put it right here, he can barely walk under it, but you can't jump. But if we do a floor object, it gives us more headroom. All right, so I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna delete these blocks. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new object, and we're going to make the object block be its parent. So we're going to call it object floor. By the way, these are all going to be invisible later on. So I set this as the sprite, and I click on parent, and I'm going to make the parent be the object block. Now the cool thing about making the parent the object block is that remember how we had the collision with the block? So it's going to treat the object floor as a block as well. So the collision will work because it has the parent of object block. However, under draw GUI, we're going to need to override that for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to draw the sprite. Otherwise, it's going to be drawing the block. And if we draw the block, the collision mask is the entire size of the block, whereas the collision mask is only going to be at the top if we use the sprite of the floor. So that's the set sprite. So I'm just going to drag it out. And we're going to set that sprite to the sprite floor. It's not animated, so it doesn't matter what you put down for sprite. So let's go ahead and add the floor to the room. So I'm just going to drag one out. And notice how I can put it above, and I can have a platform sort of like right here. I don't think you can go under it. So I'll move it over here. And then I'll put another one down below over on the left-hand side. And let's just see how this works. We should be able to see the floors for now. We should be able to jump on top of them, and we can. Except I'm still not able to jump. We're having a little issue with that. Let's double check the floor, make sure it's solid. Yes, it is solid. I think what we're going to have to do is adjust a little bit about this jumping mechanic and the gravity and all of that. Okay, so we're going to do the collision with the block a little different. Okay, so on the collision with the block, instead of just setting the gravity force to 0, I think I was supposed to set the vertical speed to 0. So I'm going to just right click and disable. And then let's just see if that works. We're going to try just the vertical speed. So we're going to set the speed. Let me just drag this to the top. Direction, vertical, speed of 0. Let's see if it improves the behavior as we jump. So we want to be able to jump from that platform. And let's just see if that works. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Now look at that, though. What the heck is going on there? He's floating in the middle of the air. Why is it that he can go so far off to the edge? I think for the case of this, it has to do with the collision. I think I'm okay with that. The only trick is that when we draw our sprites, we're going to probably want to draw them to stick out a little bit. Okay? We'll deal with that later. We're going to use tile sets for that later. But I think at this point, I think we're pretty good to go on here. Set the vertical speed this way. Let's see if we can jump with an object underneath us. Will that stop us and will that work okay? So we're going to test it out. We're going to get under that one block and see what happens. The floor. We'll get under here. Yeah, we can't even go under it, so let's fix that. I'm going to move it up just a little bit higher in the room. So I'm going to just click on this. I think I can just click it, yep, and then drag it up. All right, let's run it now. And let's just go ahead and put a block in there too while we're at it. It'll be easier to test. We'll test them both. Since we're able to jump on top of that one that was just right above the head, we should be able to bump into it. Yeah, there we go. All right. So notice we have a little bit of jumping room when we use the floor, but if we use the block, we don't at all just because of the height. So this might be when you might want to use a block versus one of the floors. Let's also see what happens when we get to the edge. We fall out of the room and then it restarts. Okay, so in the next tutorial, we're gonna start. We're gonna constrict the view of the room, make it a little tighter, and then we're gonna add ladders that we can climb up and climb down. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for watching.